Quick review, a numeral names a number. A numeral token is the actual physical instance of the numeral type, and numeral types are repeated by those instances. In the last video, we proved that adding one tally mark to numeral tokens of the same type will yield two numeral tokens that are themselves of the same type. For example, two numeral tokens of 5 tally marks plus 1 tally mark each yields two numeral tokens of the same numeral type 6. And we summarize this with proposition 1.2. If epsilon xy and epsilon wz, then x and w are the same type if and only if y and z are also the same type. This proposition starts with two pairs of related numeral tokens. In each pair, one numeral token is the result of adding a tally mark to the other. And that's important to note. It's physically adding a tally mark to a physical thing, a numeral token. We then step back and say, hey, here's how the types of numerals must be related. X is the same type of numeral token as W, if and only if Y is the same type of numeral token as Z. You may wonder, why would we do such a thing? Why would we go that way? Why not just start with the numeral types themselves? We could say something like this. Take two different numeral types and say that the second numeral type is just one more than the first numeral type. Well, then every token of them must be related in the same way. Sounds easy, right? Well, here's the thing. Pollard is studiously avoiding the claim that there are numeral types before there are numeral tokens. Not that he's claiming the reverse. Think about it this way. The numeral token is a physical thing, right? And assuming you believe that the physical world exists, and assuming you believe we have access to the physical world, it's fairly uncontentious that these physical tally marks exist. However, a numeral type is not a physical instance. It's the kind, not the individual. Now, how exactly does this kind of thing exist? Is it just something in our minds? Is it just something that exists inside the actual physical things themselves? Is it a property of those physical things? Or is it something that exists apart from the physical things? Some third thing. Now, there are reasons you could give for believing any of these three. However, the middle option is false if the numeral type could exist apart from the numeral tokens. Now, Pollard's project here is to build up a system of arithmetic without committing to one of these, and only later figuring out which one of these is the most plausible. For that reason, he wants to avoid committing himself to the idea that numeral types exist apart from numeral tokens, or even knowing the properties of numeral types apart from numeral tokens. This is why he says something very cryptic after proposition 1.2. He actually starts off explaining this. Let's say that epsilon wz, in other words, z is the result of adding a tally mark to w. Let's say that x and w are of the same type, and let's say that y and z are of the same type. Does that mean that epsilon xy? In other words, does that mean that y is the result of adding a tally mark to the numeral token x? Well, not necessarily. And that's not because y isn't one tally mark more than x. By what we just said, it must be. But because y might be one tally mark more than x, but have nothing physically to do with x. Y might be on the other side of the world. So y might be one numeral token more than x without being the result of adding a physical tally mark to the numeral token x. However, and this is the cryptic part, Pollard says we would expect to find some numeral tokens w and z such that they are in this relation epsilon wz. In other words, it is the case that z is the result of adding one tally mark to w, and w is the same type as x, and z is the same type as y. Why say this? Remember, he doesn't want to rely on the idea that types will exist apart from tokens. For this project to work then, it's important that numeral tokens do exist that exhibit this epsilon relation, that are the result of adding one tally mark to another. There's an interesting question then of whether this negates his whole project in the first place. And there's a question of whether you can present some kind of neutral system and then choose between these three options. Either way, we'll bracket that question, we'll see what he does with his project, and then we'll see how convinced we are. Personally, I like the project, I hope it succeeds, but we'll see. Anyway, let's label this relation. So definition 1.3, sigma xy. Now we have a new Greek letter. If you're not writing these down, I definitely would be. Sigma xy, if and only if a numeral token of the same type as y is the result of adding a tally mark to a numeral token that is the same type as x. In other words, this relation sigma xy is going to depend on the epsilon relation of two other numeral tokens that are of the same types as x and y. Whether or not epsilon xy is true, there are some tokens out there that are the same type as x and y that are in this epsilon relationship. Now notice x and y could be those numeral tokens. It could be that a numeral token of the same type as y namely y itself, is the result of adding one tally mark to a numeral token of the same type as x, namely x itself. In other words, if it's the case that upsilon xy, then it's also the case that sigma xy, but not necessarily the reverse. It could be. It also could be even just one of these. It could be the case that upsilon x z, in other words, z is the result of adding a tally mark to x, and z and y are the same type, so that even though it's not the case that y is the result of adding a physical tally mark to x, sigma xy is true. X and y are in this sigma relationship, and it's based on x being in the upsilon relationship with z, or the reverse. It could be the case that upsilon w y and w is the same type as x, so that it's not the case that upsilon xy, but it is the case that sigma xy.